Mem Aleph Amud Aleph. We'll begin Mem Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. Rabba said, when I was learning by Rav Huna, we had the following shaila. A Talmud Chacham, he has a tanis. He's sitting in the tanis on Erev Shabbos. It's a Erev Shabbos, but he's a tanis. He's fasting. It's a private fast, but he's fasting. Ma'olah shlume. Should he complete the tanis or not? He didn't have an answer. So what's underlying the shaila? Normally when you have a tanis, you have to complete the tanis. It has to be done and completed to the end of the day until tzeis. But over here, if he completes the tanis and he goes into now tzeis, that means he's entering Shabbos, he's starting Shabbos in a state where he's fasting, where he's ma'una. So perhaps it's not called Shabbos to begin the day in that state. On the one hand, you should say, well, he has to finish the tanis. He has to complete the tanis and it has to be completed. On the other hand, perhaps you'll say that for Kavod Shabbos, it's not appropriate to begin the day of Shabbos in that state. So he didn't have an answer. Also, the Kamei Rabbi Yehuda also didn't have an answer. Let's examine it ourselves. This Sanya we learned in the Brisa Tisha B'Av Shechol B'Shabbos. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, Erev Tisha B'Av Shechol B'Shabbos, or Erev Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos. So in any event, the next day, Sunday, is going to be the fast. The fast is going to be the next day. Even though it's Erev of the Tanis, even though the Tanis is going to be the next day, and normally we say by the end of the day on Erev Tisha B'Av, we say he has a Sudas Masechet, he has a simple meal, a very simple Suda of an egg and bread. He doesn't have anything elaborate at all. But here, since it's Shabbos, he can eat all that he wants and drink what he wants, and mal al shulchanai, and put on his table afilo kisuda shlema shaita, even an elaborate feast like a feast of Shlomo Melech. It's in his prime. So you see that even though normally we minimize the meal on Erev Tisha B'Av, but if Erev Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos, you can have a lavish feast like the Suda of Shlomo Melech in his prime. Chaliyah is Tisha B'Av be'erev Shabbos. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Erev Shabbos on Friday, Mevim like a be'vayachal. So it says clearly that you don't want to come in to enter the Shabbos in a state of suffering. So at the end of the day, he has an egg-sized portion of food. So you see that we apply this concept that he should not come in Kadeshli Kanas the Shabbos Ma'una, so therefore you're not mashlim the Tanis on Erev Shabbos. So that we see clearly from this brisa. However, the Gemara is now going to bring another brisa that seems to indicate otherwise. Tanya, we learned in another brisa. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Pam achas hayinu yeshul lifnei Rabbi Kiva. We were sitting before Rabbi Kiva. V'Tisha B'Av shechal yayis b'erev Shabbos haya. And it was Tisha B'Av, that was on Friday. V'yaviu lo be'mugol geles. And they brought for him a lightly roasted egg. I mean, it was at the end of the day, and they brought a lightly roasted egg. V'gama b'loy melech, and he swallowed it without salt. B'loy shayel toivlai, not because he was hungry and he really wanted to eat it, but elolaharas l'tamin halacha, to show him the halacha that this is the halacha that you don't come into Shabbos, you don't enter Shabbos in a state of suffering when he is misanet. Rav Yasi but Rav Yasi argues and he says, no, you complete the fast. So he argues on this concept. So we see it's a machlekes tanoim, and Rav Yasi in fact says it's also that you must complete the fast. Amar lem Rav Yasi says, don't you agree with me that if Tisha B'Av falls out on Sunday, that you don't continue eating until nightfall, that you're mafsik mi b'ayjayim. So you see, you are noyeg somewhat of a tanis on Shabbos. Amar lo hava. They says, yes, it's true, we agree. So Omar Lemi said to them, Mali likonas bakashumuna, Mali lotzes menashumuna. So you see that you fast somewhat on Shabbos. So what's the difference if you now are ending the day of Shabbos with a fast, or if you're starting the day of Shabbos with a fast? Just like you agree with me that if Tisha B'Av is on Sunday, you stop eating before the end of the day. So what's the difference? You can start the day of Shabbos by completing a fast from Friday and start the Shabbos with a fast. Just like you can end the Shabbos with a fast, you can start it with a fast. So they said, Amrlo, no, you can't compare it. Im Amud Lotzis Mimenu, we say that you can end the day of Shabbos with a fast, because he was eating and drinking the whole day, so he's not really suffering. So therefore he can stop eating earlier and start the fast there. He's not really suffering. But if he was fasting the whole day of Friday, so now to enter Shabbos in that state, where he didn't eat and drink the whole day, to start the Shabbos in that matzav, there he's suffering. So you can't start it that way. So you can't compare the two. But Ula said the halacha is like Rav Yosi, that the tanis on Erev Shabbos must be completed, and you do not eat, you complete the fast, and you enter the Shabbos in a state of suffering. Do we hold that way? I'll ask you a stira. Ain't goyzim tanis al tzibur. We're not goyzer tanis on a tzibur. So the discussion over there in the Gemara is the Gemara on tanis. Then when they didn't have rains, they were goyzer a series of fasts of tanism to daven to Hashem, to be mispan, mischanan, mispalal, mischanan, that there should be rains. You're not geyser the tanis on tzibur on these days. Rosh Chodoshim, Chanukah, Purim. You don't make a fast on those days. Those are days that are supposed to be days of more that are more joyous days. But nevertheless, they're not Yomim Tovim per se. And if they did start the series of fasts earlier, and it came out that now one of the series would end up on Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah Purim, you don't interrupt the series. You continue and you do fast on those days. That's what Rabbi Gamliel said. Rabbi Meir says, even though he said that you don't interrupt it, you're not mafsik, but but he's moida that you don't complete the fast on those days. You don't complete it on Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim. You end it a little bit earlier. And similarly, Tisha B'Av that falls out on Erev Shabbos, you don't complete it. So you see clearly, not like Rav Yosi, that you don't complete the fast on Erev Shabbos. That you should not come into Shabbos in a state of suffering. Natanya, we learn in the Brayso, also Shel Rabban Shimon Gamliel, after he was nifter, nichnas Rav Yeshua lahaver zvar. So Rav Yeshua wanted to now to negate and invalidate what his psak and say that no, we should be noig to complete the fast. But Omad Rabbi Yechon ben Nur al Ragal of Omar, Rabbi Yechon ben Nur stood on his feet and he said, no, no, the basa reisha gufazel. And we see the body has to follow the head. So we had the psak of Rabbi Gamliel, and he was the gadol from the previous Torah. We have to follow him. As long as he was alive, they were kaveya that should be the halach. Now that he's nifter, you want to negate what he said. You can't. Yeshua ain't shaymalach. We can't listen to because they already kaveya that that's the halacha, and you can't invalidate it. And nobody objected to it. So you see that they upheld the psak of Rabbi Gamliel, that you're not mashlim de tanis. More explains, he says, no. In the generation of Rabbi Gamliel, they were noig according to his psak. But Rabbi Rav Yosi's dar, they followed that the psak of Rav Yosi, and they followed his psak that you are mashlim. Is that true that even in his generation that they followed that psak? We learned in the Bryce, Amma Rabbi Lezer. When Tzaddik Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Tzaddik said, Ani Hayizim ibnei Sana ben Binyamin. He said, I was a descendant of Sana from the shade of Binyamin. And they had the different mishpachas had turns. They took turns bringing the wood for the wood for the maracha, the atzei maracha, the firewood for the mizbeach. Now, the day that they were chosen, that was their day, that they brought the wood for the mizbeach, they brought the atzei maracha. That family had their own private yontiv. They were noyed as a yontiv. So he had their day of the yontiv to bring it was the 10th day of Av. The 10th day of Av was their yontiv. So he said that Pamach was Chal Tisha B'Av Li'es B'Shabbos. 1 year Tisha B'Av fell out on Shabbos, v'dachino la'achar Shabbos. It was postponed to Sunday. That means that Tisha B'Av, the Tanas Tzibur of Tisha B'Av, was on the 10th day of Av, which was their yontiv. So they had a conflict. They had a steer. On the one hand, it's Tisha B'Av. On the other hand, it's their yontiv. So what do? V'yisanenu boy v'lo yishlamnu. So they fasted because of Tisha B'Av, but they didn't complete it. Sheyontiv shalanu haya, because that was their yontiv. So they didn't complete it. They didn't complete the fast of Tisha B'Av because it was their yontiv. Now, what does that mean? That means that when Tisha B'Av was on the 10th day of Av, that was their yontiv, so they didn't complete it. Now, in a regular year, Tisha B'Av was the 9th day of Av. Their yontiv is the 10th day. So every Tisha B'Av is Erev their yontiv. So they only didn't complete the Tisha B'Av that year because it coincided and conflicted with their yontiv on the 10th of Av. Time of the Erev yontiv mashlimim. But in a regular year, when Tisha B'Av was Erev their yontiv, they would be mashlim. They did complete the fast, even though it meant that they entered into the day of their yontiv in a state of fasting, in a state of suffering. So you see that we don't adopt Rabbi Gamliel's psak that you don't come into the yontiv or to the Shabbos in a state of ma'una where you're suffering. We don't apply that. When it says no. Amar Ravina shani yontiv shel divrayim, there's a difference. They can't compare the yontiv of divrayim of the 10th of Av to Shabbos. Shani yontiv shel divrayim mitoyach shemisana b'shois mashlimam aboy arvius. That's different. Yes, it's true that they entered into the 10th of Av, which was their yontiv, and they entered into a state where they were fasting and suffering, but that's a yontiv shel divrayim. Now, yontiv shel divrayim, you can fast for hours. A limited amount, you are allowed to fast for several hours. It's a limited amount. You could fast on that type of a yontiv. So therefore, you can also enter into the yontiv in a state of suffering. But Shabbos, you can't fast even for a limited amount on Shabbos. You're not mashlim the fast on Erev Shabbos. You don't come into the Shabbos in a state of suffering because you're misuna. So therefore, you can't compare. Yes, it's true that on the Erev they came into the fast of the 10th of Av in the state of fasting and suffering, but you can't compare that to Erev Shabbos. Amrav Yosef, he said he didn't hear the statement that Ula said that the halach is like Rav Yosef, that you are mashlim the tanis. Amrle Abaya, he said, Ad amrit lalan v'ha amrit lalan. You do, Rav Yosef was sick and forgot his learning. So Abai was reminding him, and he said, yes, you taught it to us, and you taught it to us regarding the following. The Mishnah says, Ein goizim tanis halatzi b'reish chadosh. You're not geyser a set of the tanis on that should fall out on Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah Purim, like we learned before, of Harmina law, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Zu Divrei Rav Meir, Sham Mishum Rav Gamliel. That is the opinion of Rav Meir and same of Rav Gamliel. But the Chum say, if it did happen to be that they said the fast and it fell on Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah Purim, then you're mashlim. Now it says in that Mishnah as well, and then it said also on a fast that comes out, it also says in that context, and a fast that comes out on Friday. So, and he said that the Chum argue, and you say you're mashlim. So doesn't that therefore mean that you're mashlim, whether it falls out, the fast falls out on Rosh Chodesh and Chanukah Purim, or also on Erev Shabbos, and you are mashlim. So you see over here, we hold like Rabbi Yossi, that you are mashlim. So my lavakula, including Friday. When Mora says no, loy, it's not referring to Friday. It's a Chanukah Purim. It's only regarding Chanukah and Purim, but not on Friday. And Hachinam Mistabra to say that because the Isal Kedaita. Because if you're going to say as a kula, it's going on the case of where the fast falls out on Friday as well. He asked him Mishai Leveloi Pashal, and he couldn't give an answer. So why wouldn't he have an answer if it's clear from the Mishnah that, and it's clear from here, that you would be mashlim if it came out on Friday? Frag the Gemara, no, that's not a proof, because according to you, the Darsh Marzutim Mishmei the Rav Huna, he said in now halacha misana mashlim. He says that the halacha is misana mashlim. Haboy minei Rabbim Rav Huna. Well, Rabbah asked Rav Huna, v'loy pashadle, and he didn't answer. He didn't have an answer for him. So what's the pshat? Ella, you must say, hamakam edesham. Originally, he didn't have an answer. Originally, he didn't know. And then, however, he heard this Rav statement, and therefore he's adopted that as halacha, v'halabasa d'shama. And this is now, that was before he heard the statement, v'halabasa d'shama, and this was after the statement. But originally he didn't know the halacha, it was before he heard the psak. And halabasa d'shama. Hachanami here also, hamekama d'shama. Then since the Rav Yehuda also, didn't know the halacha, that's before he heard the psak of Rav, halabasa d'shama. So you have no proof from there. But in any event, the Gemara's conclusion is Darsh Marzut Mishmei the Rav Huna Halacha Mesanin Mashlim. The halacha is if the Tanis comes out on Friday, you're Mesana and you're Mashlim, you do complete the fast, even if it now means entering into Shabbos in a state of suffering, nevertheless you complete the fast. Misho Yitziu Nachem Ruach Roa Ein Lo Ela Dalet Amos.